Good evening and welcome to Community Report. I'm Pat Stern, the Executive Director of the ICRC, and I'm pinch hitting for Vicki Pritchard, who is away this evening on doing some other business. So we certainly will miss her, and I thank her for allowing me to fill in for her. Tonight I'm very, very excited because on Community Report we're going to be talking about an issue that has been written about a lot in the newspapers and talked about a lot on TV, but recycling. It's getting more popular in a lot of our communities, and people are finding that those little red bins are not sufficient anymore. So with me tonight is Jennifer Heft, who is the Assistant City Manager for the City of Mason, Molly Yeager, who is the Corporate Communications Coordinator for Rumpke Consolidated Companies Incorporated, and Suzanne Mason, who is the Program Manager for the Warren County Solid Waste District. Welcome, ladies. We were joking earlier, tonight's the night of the blondes, so hopefully we won't have a blonde moment.
Oh, good.
But let's get right into this because we've got a lot of things to talk about. And of course, I'll brag a little bit about Mason. The City of Mason is always on the cutting edge, and I believe you're one of the first communities who are starting this program. So tell me, Jennifer, what changes are taking place in recycling in the City of Mason?
Well, earlier this year, the city's waste removal contract was up in March, and we renegotiated a new contract with Rumpke, and as part of those negotiations, we were able to obtain a larger recycling bin for our resident. It's a 65-gallon container with a lid, so it's on wheels. It's real easy for residents to move it out to their curbside for the same price as the former 18-gallon container that all residents were using. So with that, the larger container with a lid allows keeps our community clean. That was one of the items that we, on numerous occasions, were getting comments from our residents, phone calls in, complaints when it was a windy day, or just an overflowing 18-gallon container. They thought it was, leaving their community unsightly, and they wanted us to make some changes with that. So as part of this contract, we were able to, like I said, successfully negotiate a price that was consistent with the 18-gallon container.
Molly, I have a question to ask you with Rumpke and your experience with other communities. I see the statistics are that 60 to 70% of people are recycling, and it's increasing probably every year. Is that why Rumpke started manufacturing these larger containers and bringing them to like a City of Mason?
Well, we don't actually manufacture them. We purchase them from another company. Okay. But yes, it's one of the many reasons is we saw that people are recycling more, and we found that if we gave them a larger recycling container, they will recycle more. Because if that bin, once it was full, people said, well, my trash can's halfway empty, I'll just put it over there. So giving them the larger container, they definitely have the option to recycle more.
I would think elderly people, those containers would be pretty heavy, for even though it's recyclable and it's empty bottles. I would think an elderly person would find this bigger bin a lot easier to use than the old red containers.
I think we're finding a little bit of both.
Okay.
While the bigger bins are on wheels, they are 65-gallon containers, and so they are somewhat heavier. We did give residents an option that if they didn't want the larger 65-gallon container, they could contact the city, and they could keep their 18-gallon container. So they had an option.
And what happened with that? Did a lot of people call and say, I don't want to switch? Or
we had about 400 residents that responded to them. A lot of them were elderly, or they were just a two-person household that just didn't have that many recyclables, and they chose, or there wasn't enough room in the garage for the larger container, and so they selected to stay with the 18-gallon container.
So, Suzanne, I want you to tell us why is recycling important to the county?
You know, Pat, when people think about why we recycle, the first thing they think about is we are keeping waste out of the landfill. And that's an obvious reason, and it's an excellent reason. But there's other reasons, too. You know, recycling creates jobs, it saves energies, and it preserves our resources. You know, the more paper we recycle, the fewer trees that we cut down to replenish those papers. You know, here's an interesting little fact. Recycling an aluminum can will save enough energy to power a TV for 3 hours. One can. When you consider that we have to go back to the natural resources to get that metal, It saves that much energy. A glass jar recycled can power a TV for about 2 hours. So it's not just that it keeps it out of the landfill, although that's a very good reason, but it's also a lot of other reasons too.
And is that part of your position in the county, is to educate, go around to the schools and talk to them about recycling?
It is. We have an educator named Suzanne Geisler, and she goes around. She is available to go to every school in the county, and she talks about recycling and all kinds of topics about solid waste and water protection.
Because I know from my own daughter, we get a lot of pressure about not recycling enough. So I'm sure that she's getting it somewhere, and it must be.
Well, it might be from us.
Probably. Jennifer, I wanted to know, will residents be charged for this bin, this new recycling bin?
No, as I indicated previously, there's no additional charge for the larger bin.
Okay. And how do they get one?
Well, I can take that one for you,
Okay.
Jennifer. It's actually
Molly.
really easy. We delivered that to their houses. If they were an eligible single-family household, we went out and we delivered these 65-gallon carts directly to them. We assembled them, put them right at their curb, so there's right there for them to use.
So when did that take place? Was that over
It was
the weekend?
over last
Okay.
weekend. It was about 17 trucks that we sent out. Lots of people,
Wow.
lots of manpower, and over
Big effort.
Saturday and Sunday, we delivered to all the Mason residents that were eligible to receive this cart.
Great. And how do residents of Mason get more than one cart if they feel they're filling one up?
Well, that's great. If they can fill more than one 65-gallon cart, that's amazing. And if they need a second one, they can get a second one. There is a small charge for that. It's $2.50, and all they need to do is call Rumpke at 792-2900 and order a second cart.
That's monthly, right?
It is monthly.
Okay.
That's a monthly
Okay.
fee. So it's really small.
Yeah, that's small.
It's really small. It's less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
That's true. And what should people do with their old red bin?
I get this question
that's a
quite
Molly
a bit.
question.
I get this
Okay.
question quite a bit. And actually, we do recycle them. If you don't want them anymore, you can put them inside those larger 65-gallon containers, and we will pick them up and we will recycle them. Now, we don't need them all back. So if you have a use for it, whether it's in your kid's bedroom organizing their stuffed animals, or in your garage organizing, basketballs, baseballs, anything along those lines, please do keep it. We don't need them all back. But if it's broken, cracked, you have no use for it anymore, go ahead, put it in your cart. We'll recycle it.
Great. And Suzanne, this is a question for the county. What types of items should people be recycling?
Well, people who have Rumpke as their trash hauler, they can first recycle paper, all kinds of paper, your office paper, magazines, newspapers, cardboard boxes, and now you can even recycle the clean portions of pizza boxes as long as there's no grease on it. Here's a little tip about paper. This is what I do in my home. I take an empty cereal box, and as the kids come home with all of those school papers, just stuff it in the cereal box. And that endless supply of junk mail that we get, stuff it in the cereal box, and then when
Great
it's full,
idea.
I just pop the whole thing into my recycling cart. You can also recycle plastic bottles. Now, when you do the bottles, make sure it's a bottle with a neck on. We're not talking about the tubs, but the bottles with the neck on it. You can put those in. And don't forget, you can recycle outside of the kitchen. Don't forget the shampoo bottles and the detergent bottles. It's not just the bottles that food comes in, but those bottles as well. You can put glass jars into your recycling container. Take the lid off and recycle your glass jars. You can recycle metal cans. Give it a quick rinse to keep the odors out and to keep your recycling
bugs
bin.
and sticky.
Yeah, just a quick rinse it out, and then pop it into your recycling cart. You can leave the lids on now too.
I was going to ask you that. So lids can stay on
Yes,
now. Okay.
lids can stay
And
on.
somebody said you have to crush though. No crush or crush? What?
We prefer, if you do crush them, it just is a
Okay.
lot easier to run through our system. One of the biggest problems that we had is when we bail those bottles and jugs at the end, if they're not crushed, those lids will shoot right off.
Oh, they pop.
They
like a
pop
little-
right off.
Okay,
Yeah, so
okay.
we do prefer if you can crush them beforehand.
Okay, that's a great idea. And what if my new recycling cart breaks, Molly? What would happen?
Well, they are under warranty. That's the good news. If it breaks, what we need you to do is call the Mason Utility Customer Service Department, and they'll send one of the Rumpke people out to fix these carts. So whether it's a wheel that might fall off or if the little latch on the back might come apart, we'll fix it. It might take us a little bit of time, but within 2 to 3 weeks, we will have it fixed, and there's no additional charge for that.
Jennifer, if I need a cart, can I pick one up at the municipal center?
Well, unfortunately, with the larger containers, we don't have the space available to store an inventory of them like we did with the 18-gallon containers. So if residents need a cart, we ask that they call the Mason Utility Line, and that's 229-8533.
And they can get that off your website, too.
Yep.
That's the phone number. And if somebody's just moving into Mason, what would they do? How would they?
Well, if they moved into Mason, hopefully the cart's still at the residence.
Okay.
That's what we're hoping, that it's still there, because the cart actually belongs to the residence that was delivered to. It's kept a record there. It has a little tracking number, so we know where the cart actually is. And so if you do move, don't take the cart with you. Leave it at the house, and if you move inside the city of Mason, hopefully another cart will be waiting there for you. If you live outside the city of Mason, which I hope Jennifer would say, please don't move outside the city of Mason, call Rumpke and we'll see if one's available in your area.
If they choose, at the very beginning, Jennifer, if people chose to just stick with their red container, their 18-gallon container, can they upgrade later on?
Sure.
Okay.
They can always give us a call. Again, just call the Mason Utility Line and let them know. There'll probably be about a 2 to 3 week delivery time for that container. But they're welcome
That's good to
upgrade
know. That's
anytime.
good to know for people. And then, Molly, if, how it was years ago, you had I think a lot of reason people don't recycle, they think, oh, I've got to separate everything and put things in little piles. Tell me about that whole situation. What do you have to do to recycle today?
You don't have to do any of that anymore. Back in the early 2000s, we stopped making people separate the material out. We found that more people were willing to recycle if we made it easier. So we invested in the technology at Rumpke to make it even easier than what it was before. Not to mention now we can use a different type of truck, more like a garbage style truck that people are more familiar with, to collect all these materials, because we don't have to put plastic in one compartment and paper in another compartment. Okay. We can put everything in one compartment and then take it to our plant, and then we have the machines that are able to sort it out by type. It's really a neat process. We have a giant magnet that pulls out things like metal. We have a machine called an eddy current, which actually repels aluminum because you can't attract it with the magnet. Then we have a series of screeners that will pull out paper and cardboard based on their sizes. And then we have optical sorters that can actually look at those plastic bottles and identify, is it a plastic bottle that's number 1? Is it a plastic bottle that's number 2? Or is it a 3 through 7? It's very high tech. And if you really want to see this process, you can go to rumpkecleanandgreen.com. We have a great video online where you can watch it all be sorted out by type. It's really neat. It's very quick, too.
I think that that would be really something great for the teachers out there, too, to expose the students to if they want to learn about recycling. And then I know this isn't one of the questions that we had talked about before, but can you talk a little bit about what happens when the recyclables leave Rumpke?
Oh, yeah.
Are they sold to other?
They are. Okay. I mean, we partner. That's how you determine what can be recycled, is what a company is willing to turn into something new. If a company is not willing to turn it into new, then it really can't be recycled. You'd just be stockpiling it. For example, a plastic bottle, it could become something like carpet, where a lot of our plastic bottles end up, is a carpet manufacturer called Mohawk Industries. So they make the carpet backing and the carpet fiber. Then a lot of the paper will become new paper products, from things like paper puzzles to newspaper or other pieces of paper. Glass becomes fiberglass insulation or new glass bottles and jars. Aluminum cans become new aluminum cans, and it's a really quick process. Within 60 days, that aluminum can will be back on a store shelves as a new aluminum can. Very quick process.
That's amazing.
And then the metal cans will become new metal cans as well. We just work with the local steel manufacturers in the area. They'll melt it down and turn it back into new metal cans, or really any metal application, whether that's a hammer or a building or a car. So think about that. Your car could actually have soup cans in it.
Wow. Of course, the number one reason for recycling is to keep these materials out of the landfill. Let's talk a little bit about that and where the garbage is going now from Mason, and I guess it could be both of your questions because you're both really kind of responsible, and also the city, because if you create garbage, you have to have a place to put it.
Exactly.
And what's going on with Rumpke? Are you out of space, or?
Not quite yet, but we are getting close. The reality is, right now, with our current landfill, under our current permit, we have about 13 years of life left at our landfill. That's not a lot. 13 years, that means in our lifetimes, we may not have an area for trash to go. Now, Rumpke is currently working on trying to get an expansion at our site, but that would only give us about 30 more years of life. So 43 years, that's still not a lot of time. So why we want people to recycle is so we can save that landfill space for things that we can't recycle, such as the dirty diapers or some of the waste that comes from the commercial streams that people just haven't found a use for yet. So we need to save that valuable landfill space for those items that we don't have anything to do with them yet.
And Suzanne, getting back to my original question, why does the county care if there's no landfill space left? I mean, is it...
Well, we have to have a place to put our real garbage. When people study garbage, as icky of a job as that sounds, some people do study garbage, and they find that there's so much going into the landfill that can be recycled, so much paper that should have been recycled, and it's going into the landfill. And even things like that you can compost, all of that vegetables, people could compost in their own backyards, and it could keep that out of the landfill. So it's very important to keep that freed up for future generations. Also, too, how do you measure? How much is there like a measurement that the city uses to kind of gauge that, in the city of Mason, 64% of the people recycled this year versus the next? What's the measurement?
There's a lot of things we measure. Tonnage, how many tons we're picking up at the curb. That's a great way to measure. So we can say, okay, in 2012 they recycled this versus 2011 they recycled this. Our drivers do a visual check to see how many carts are being put out each week or each month, because some people with the larger ones might only put it out every other week if it's not full. So we have a couple different ways of measuring it.
And what kind of incentives are there out there with the city or through Rumpke or through the county to get people to recycle? Is it more an incentive for the city to reduce the amount of waste? Are any of you working on any kind of incentive programs?
It feels good to recycle.
It does feel good to recycle.
And if your neighbors do it and they see the cart out there, I think it has a very addictive effect on the neighborhood itself.
Well, not to mention, it's cheaper to recycle a bottle than it is to throw it away. When you're thinking about putting what's going out to the curb each week, if you put it in your trash can, it's going to cost the city of Mason more to throw all those items away than it does to recycle those items. So really, by recycling, you're helping the city of Mason save cash. So.
Well, I think the city has done over the years a number of different things to help reduce that utility bill for our residents.
Okay.
As costs have gone up, inflation and otherwise, fuel costs, et cetera, that monthly bill to our resident has gone up over the contract. And the city, by recycling, can help reduce that, as well as we have a brush chipping program, so we reduce the amount of brush that would normally go into the landfill. So we've looked at different alternatives and different ways to keep that cost low. As we move to this new contract with Rumpke, as well as the larger recycling bin, we kept the same monthly rate for our residents.
That's great.
So that's pretty significant in this time.
Good.
And that helps, I guess, the bottom line, save money. Sure. And the same thing for the county. And I wanted to talk to you also, Jennifer, who is actually directing and producing this show, had brought up a good point. What about businesses? What types of incentives are there for businesses, and are businesses eligible for these large containers?
Well, businesses have the ability to recycle, first of all. They just can call us and we'll work with them directly. One of the first things that we do is we come out and do a waste audit where we look at what they're throwing away and determine how much of that could be recycled. Then we can provide them with a cost analysis saying if you add recycling, because you're going to add additional container, you'll pay this much more. However, you're going to be sending this much less to the landfill, which could save your bottom dollar. So we try to lay out all the options for them and give them the best program that they could possibly have. And there's some cases where, a lot of bars and restaurants where they have a lot of glass bottles and jars from their kitchens, a lot of cardboard that they might not be throwing away that much. And actually at Rumpke now, we now have an organics waste recycling program for commercial businesses as well. So we could really set you up if you're a restaurant or a bar that you might not be putting anything out at the curb anymore.
Oh, and how do businesses find out about
They just need to
service?
call. We do have a sales team that goes out and tries to sell these services, but they can always call us as well, 792-2900, and you can talk to one of our sales reps.
Great. And Suzanne, getting back to the county, we talked a little bit about incentive plans, and you said there is an educational program. You've got a coordinator who actually goes out to the schools. And how do teachers and principals find out about how to have a presentation made at one of the schools in Warren County?
This week I've been copying almost 1,000 brochures, which will be in every teacher's mailbox within the next couple of weeks. So they know about our program, they get literature about it, and they call us up, and we're happy to schedule with them.
Great. And Jennifer, talk to me about how did you roll this whole program out to the residents? Was it in the newsletter, and that's how people found out about it, and so they knew that those big containers were being delivered this weekend?
Yes, we have a number of different communication tools we typically use with our residents. We have a bi-monthly newsletter called Mason Matters, and it appears in the Our Town magazine. We did press releases on it, and then we did an individual postcard to every resident in Mason to let them know that the larger events were
there weren't any surprises when people saw these trucks rolling down?
We hope not.
I think it was a surprise. There were so many of them that I think people, just the sight of the trucks pulling in with the number of, but it was like clockwork. The staff at Rumpke did an amazing job rolling into the neighborhoods or into the cul-de-sacs and streets and just unveiling the new.
It's an amazing operation for sure.
I want you to tell us again about the pizza boxes, because I think people will get confused.
Well, the pizza boxes, what we're asking for is clean pizza boxes. And I tell you what, since we made this announcement, La Rosa's has done a great thing. They put a grease catcher in the bottom of those pizza boxes. So most of those La Rosa's pizza boxes, at least the ones I get each week, have been salvageable. Like there hasn't been an ounce of grease on it because of that grease catcher. Now, if you do have a greasy bottom, which sometimes happens with some of those pepperoni or meaty pizzas, tear off the lid. Or you can be
or just cut it.
Quite particular, cut around those grease spots because you can really salvage a lot of that box now.
Okay. And we talked a little bit about composting. Is the county doing anything to educate the residents about composting?
We have a class talking about composting, and we actually bring into the classroom a composting barrel that has real worms in it, so the kids get to touch the worms.
Oh, that's great.
It's very cool.
That's right.
But yeah, we encourage residents to compost. It's so easy to do, and especially in the summertime when it's nice out, you can go outside and compost. That's my favorite way to get all those nutrients back into the earth where they belong. It's a great way to recycle.
And is there anything that you really shouldn't be composting as far as?
Yes, at home, it's probably not a good idea to put meat out there. It will attract animals.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But yeah, your vegetables, your grass clippings, you can even put your newspapers in there. That's good for your compost. It evens out it balances everything. So yeah, all that can go into your compost.
Now, you know what, Jennifer, I wanted you to just talk a little bit about the billing process, because people don't contract directly with Rumpke. Talk me through, if I'm a resident of Mason, where does that appear on my bill?
Well, residents of Mason get one utility bill, and on that bill they get billed for stormwater, water, sewer, and trash. And that is billed through Greater Cincinnati Water Works. Back in about 2000, the city contracted with Greater Cincinnati Water Works when we began operating, or they began operating the city's water system. They took over the billing for that as well. And as part of that contract, we were successfully able to negotiate the fact that they would bill for all of our utilities, which is convenience for our homeowners.
Right.
They get it all on one bill.
Right.
But I do want to stress that not all residents in Mason may receive a bill directly by GCWW. If you live in a condo or apartment complex, your association might bill directly with Rumpke for waste removal services. So they may not see that individually on their bills.
And you mentioned, Jennifer, you mentioned a little while before the show that there's actually a competitive bid process.
Yes.
That's correct. So other types of carriers, of waste removal companies, come in and they bid for the City of Mason's contract.
Right, and every 5 years we bid out a 5-year contract. Typically it's a 2-year contract with an option to renew annually up to 3 additional years. Rumpke has held that contract as long as I've been in Mason, which has been 16 years, so we're very fortunate. Rumpke has obvious experience in the area. We enjoy their services, and they have great customer service, which is a huge priority for the city. So yes, every 5 years we bid out competitively, and what that does, we hope, is help keep our rates low for our residents, because it puts competition out there, but also allows allows a competitive bid process, so if others are interested in servicing Mason, there's an option for them to be able to do so.
Well, we're starting to get at the end of the show. Is there anything that you would like to wrap up with a quick comment about the new program?
We provided those carts, so we hope everybody uses them. So kind of if you build it, they will come. We provided the carts. I hope you use them.
Okay, and Molly, give us the website for Rumpke and your phone number,
There's a
please.
couple different websites you can go to. Rumpke.com is the basic website for all of Rumpke services, but if you want to learn more about the recycling process specifically, you can either go to rumpkerecycling.com or rumpkecleanandgreen.com, where we house some different videos. And then the phone number is 792-2900.
Thanks. And Jennifer?
I think I would just add to that and say, you know, if you've got the larger bin and don't want it, try it for 90 days. I think that's what Rumpke and the City of Mason are both saying. Try it. If you don't like it in 90 days, feel free to call our Mason utility line. Again, that number is 229-8533. We'll be happy to remove that container and you can continue using the 18-gallon container.
And can you also remind the residents of the website?
Sure. Mason's website is imaginemason.org.
Great. And Suzanne, any ending thoughts from the county?
I just want to encourage people to start recycling if you haven't started already. It's really very simple. It's not inconvenient, so it's a good thing to do. If they have questions, the number at the county is 513-695-1209, and we have a website as well at co.warren.oh.us.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much for appearing tonight, and boy, congratulations to the City of Mason for taking this big step, and what a great thing for your residents. Thank you for tuning in and watching all about all the exciting new recycling adventures that are happening in the City of Mason. Good night.
If you're a community leader and interested in being on Community Report, give us a call here at the ICRC 772-4272.